I get asked all the time, why do I love Real Housewives? And there's a long answer to that question, and there's a very, very short answer to that question.
Well, no, you understand that
No, stop. Don't come over here.
I'm nosy, okay? Hello, my name is Heather. I'm a huge Real Housewives fan, and thank you for coming to my channel where we are going to recap Real Housewives starting from the very beginning, Real Housewives of Orange County, Season 1. The thing about people who watch Housewives is we love to talk about housewives. And honestly, that goes for like all Bravo and reality shows, and honestly most TV shows in general, but we're talking Housewives today, mama. And if you're somebody who you've never watched Housewives, but you have someone in your life who does, they've probably tried to get you to watch it. And chances are, if you're watching this very first video, that someone is probably me. And the thing about starting Housewives is that it can be very daunting. It's like, oh, I'd love to start this show. My friend keeps talking about it, but then you look and there's like 700 episodes. It's like literally reality TV One Piece. So I get it. It can be very daunting, which is what I'm here for. There was a really good video by a creator called Deeply Superficial that kind of outlines what the best place to start each franchise is. I reference it constantly. Like, I send it to people all the time. I go back because there's some franchises I haven't watched yet. Haven't watched Dallas, Miami, New Jersey, and I was watching Orange County, but I stopped it around season 7 so I could start this series. And I like to know like what the hot spots are. I haven't watched the RHONY reboot because in the summer I was walking past the bus shelter and it had an ad for it, and then I got stung by a wasp. So that was kind of like, okay, who's gonna answer for this? Who is gonna answer for this? And obviously also because it's boring as fuck, so I haven't watched it. So yeah, that's a really good video, and I will put it in the description because again, it is literally kind of like the Bible to me, because people do ask me like, oh, what's a good season to start? And I'm like, that question goes right over my head, because for me, like, mama, I'm starting from the beginning no matter what. I need every morsel of context. I need every atom, every molecule of context I can get. I need it. I have to watch it. I don't care if it's slop. I don't care if it's boring. I am seated. I'm glued to my chair. So I'm going to be glued to my chair so that you don't have to be. So before we get started, I just want to give a couple of kind of disclaimers, if you can even call it that. Number one, this season is very different than what we come to know and expect from Real Housewives. It lays a lot of the foundation for the tropes of the show, the style of the show, but it is very different. And it is very easy to call the humble season 1 Orange County boring or whatever, because in retrospect, now in the contemporary era, we've seen Aviva Drescher throw her leg. We've seen reality Von Tees. We've seen dinners, lunches, brunches, tea parties, boat rides, vacations from hell, that it's very easy to look at this and call it boring. So just have a bit of an open mind. We will talk a little bit about the history of the show as well. Okay, so number 2, and this is kind of more of like a general disclaimer about the show. If you are thinking of watching, I kind of just want to like, you know, forewarned is forearmed. This season was filmed in 2005 and aired in 2006. So the standard for what was okay to say then on TV is somewhat different than what it is now. So just kind of like, if you are thinking of watching the show, it is a product of its time. So they do say some things about like body image and that kind of stuff that are reflective of that time. I'm not going to spend a ton of time unpacking and going like, ooh, that's not, at every like of the time thing they say, unless I think that it, you know, serves a bit of relevance. So just keep that in mind if you are thinking of watching the show. Okay, and finally, this one I would hope goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyways. The beauty about Real Housewives is everybody has their own opinions on things, and this is my video, so these are my opinions. If you disagree, you're more than welcome to give your opinion, but just be nice about it. There's no reason to be an asshole. And if you're somebody who came on my video to tell me that Real Housewives is stupid, then you're nosy. You are nosy. What are you doing here? Like, so yeah, the long and short of it, sit back, relax, be nice to me. I'm a Pisces. It's my first video. Thank you. Have fun. Get yourself a drink, maybe some water, Vita tequila, rosé, Pinot Grigio, Skinny Girl margarita, Belvedere and soda, 3 lemons, carcass out, served in a short glass, dirty martini with blue cheese stuffed olives, whatever tickles your fancy, mama. let's get into it. Not to stop you in your tracks one more time, but before we get into the pilot, I will give a little bit of background about the show, and I will give that throughout the pilot because I do think some of it's really important and actually really funny and interesting to me. And the history of the show actually will directly tie into the first woman who we meet, who we'll get to in a second. But Scott Dunlop, not Andy Cohen, was the person who actually conceptualized the show, but he wanted it to be more of like a Curb Your Enthusiasm mockumentary style as opposed to what it became. And it was more about women and their families and like their relationship with their kids, their husbands, etc., as opposed to what we know it now, which is a lot more about the interpersonal relations between women, which is how I prefer it, honestly. And so Scott Dunlop was at a dinner party one day in 1997, and everybody around him was just, they were talking about getting their kids into college and what the best cleaning services were. And he kind of was like, there's no humor in this place. Like, what the hell is going on? So he had this idea to make kind of a comedy style documentary reality TV show similar to something like Curb Your Enthusiasm that was more improv based and people played characters. With the working title was Behind the Gates, a look inside the lives of people in this gated community. And he wanted to give a new spin on reality TV and what we knew of it at that time. And as I'm sure you can imagine, that initial concept tanked because that's not what we're seeing on TV today. But he'd put out an ad in the Orange County Register looking for participants to be a part of the show. And with that being said, let's get into it. So the episode opens with this kind of montage of these very affluent California scenes, golf courses, ocean views, horseback riding, that kind of stuff, with these voiceovers of the women on the show saying, you know, it's a lifestyle, coda de casa, and living behind the gates and that kind of thing.
It's just money and you can't take it with you.
So we meet Jeana Keough, who somewhat poetically was actually the first person that Scott Dunlop met when he moved to Coda de Casa. She is the very first housewife to be cast on the show, and she is working as a real estate agent, and she's a former actress, model, Playboy model, which we hear a lot about Playboy on the show because, again, it's 2005, and I feel like the chokehold that Playboy had on culture at this time is very evident, and we see it here. And she's showing a $10 million home, 9,000 square foot, this very, very 2000s California style McMansion that's stunning, sickening. So Jeana, working as a real estate agent, retired model, actress, and she's married to Matt Keough, who's a retired player for the Oakland A's, baseball player. Somewhat important detail. And she makes kind of an insane comment about how his mom actually picked her out of all his girlfriends for her genetics, because his mom thought that she had like the right genes to make like great kids, which is just like, okay.
My husband and his mother picked me out of several of his girlfriends because they thought I had the right build for their genetics.
And they have three kids together. They have Colton, who's 13 years old, Cara, who's 16 years old, and Shane, who is 18 years old. And I just want to say right out the gate, you cannot tell me that is an 18-year-old. That is a 27-year-old. People always say like, oh, like people looked so much older in the 90s. Like, what the hell? Like, oh, like people don't look like grown-ups the way they used to. And normally I'd call bullshit on that. But when I look at Shane Keough, I'm like, that is a 45-year-old man. That is a grown man. And I'm just going to say it. Jeana has some badass kids. These kids are spoiled rotten, mama. And we kind of see that immediately because she's talking about Shane, her oldest son, and how he was given a silver Mercedes and he was driving it around one day and some random guy was like, that's a girl's car. And then we immediately see Cara, his younger sister, driving the car. And Cara is bitching about how she gets the hand-me-downs from her brother and she wants a new car because the window switch on her car is broken. She's having an absolute meltdown. Also, her name is spelled Cara, like Cara, the group. So we immediately see them shopping for a new car, and Cara says, like, that's how we show each other we love each other in our family is through shopping. So they're very spoiled, materialistic. Like, we're kind of immediately getting a sense of who these people are. I actually do have one more disclaimer I need to give. I have one more disclaimer I have to give, and this is before I get into the next woman, and more specifically, her fiance. if you're from Bravo, affiliated with Bravo or the show, maybe you're a housewife, former housewife, friend of a friend of a friend of a former housewife, and I say something nasty and rude about you that you don't like, I'm a big fan of your work. Clearly, I continue to give you money and support through my viewership, and I probably will until either I die or the show goes off the air. So I can't hate you that much. So don't come down on me with any paperwork or anything. So with that out of the way, the next woman we meet is actually the last woman who was cast on the show, and we'll get into that in a second. But it is the 24-year-old Jo De La Rosa and her 36-year-old fiance, Slade Smiley.
He's pretty much keeping me.
And Jo is the soon-to-be stepmom of the two kids that Slade shares custody of from two different marriages. Again, we'll get into it. So then Jo says that Slade basically expects her to be staying at home, looking after the house, looking after the kids, cleaning, and having dinner on the table when he gets home, even though she can't cook. So, and Slade, I'm just going to come right out and say it, and if I say it once, I'm going to say it 50 more times. He's such a loser. He's such a loser to me, and I'm sorry. Don't hit me with a lawsuit, Slade Smiley. So Slade works a 7-figure job that no matter how many times they repeat it throughout the show, I'm never going to remember what it is. But he works a 7-figure job, and she says that initially she really wanted to work as well, but he doesn't want her to work. He wants her to enjoy this life. And we see her looking so bored, like incredibly bored, like to the point where it's bleak.
Everyone thinks they want to live the life. Everyone thinks they want the cars and the houses and the bling and the whole shebang. And it might be a little different story once you actually get it. It gets kind of lonely around here. Hey. Hi, how are you? I'm just sitting.
How Jo ended up getting on the show was actually because Scott Dunlap was emceeing a fundraiser in Keough and mentioned the show, like mentioned that, oh, like I'm doing this show, and it was immediately approached by Slade Smiley, who could smell his 15 minutes of fame and really wanted to be on the show, which we can tell. Trust me, we can tell. He really wanted to be on the show, and they sort of were like, yeah, that's really cool. We'll talk to your girlfriend about that, because they'd kind of decided that was going to be more what the show was going to be about. And Slade will tell people that he paid $2,500 to get on the show, when that's just not the case. So
85% of the women around here have had breast implants.
So the next woman we meet is Kimberly Bryant, who moved to Coto de Casa from Baltimore with her husband Scott and their two kids, Travis and Bianca. And we see her talk about like image in Coto and how important image and appearance is, and this notion of like being a trophy wife. And we see her doing Pilates and all this stuff, and she talks about how 85% of the women in Coto have breast implants, and she does, and they are, you'll notice, trust me.
Go ahead and stand.
I went from a 32A to a 32D, and most women I spoke to wish they had gone bigger.
Kimberly, like, she really wanted to be on the show, which is really interesting, because they do say in Not All Diamonds and Rosé that she actually, as the show production started to go on, it kind of ended up being not what she really expected. So I noticed when I was making my notes for this, I was like, I feel like I'm not saying a lot about her. Maybe it seems like it comes off like she's really boring. And then when I read that again, I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And we'll get to sort of what one of the things she was going through during the filming is when we get to that.
I don't want to get old.
So the next woman, I have ADHD. I need to like squeeze on something so I can actually focus on what I'm saying and not go utterly insane and go on a tangent, which I'm probably going to do anyways. So yeah, leave me and my little friend alone. So the next housewife who we meet is none other than the OG of the OC, Miss Vicki Gunvalson. When I tell you that Vicki Gunvalson's first scene on the show is like genuinely a masterclass in introducing a character, like in my humble opinion, I'm no expert, but in my humble opinion, like the way she's introduced really, and I know I'm hyping it up, but it really communicates so much of her personality and like everything we need to know about her right out the gate, because she's someone who is so neurotic and controlling. And we kind of immediately get that.
Hi, Kathy, Vicki Gunvalson. Just wanted to follow up with you regarding midget.
Mom. Mom.
What?
My appointment's in 3 minutes.
You know what? You're gonna be late.
Oh, can you come with me?
Can I come with you? Okay, I'll bring my laptop in the car.
We learn she sells insurance, and she's one of the top insurance salespeople in all of America. And she started selling insurance because she was a single mom. She got divorced. She had 2 young kids who we will soon meet, and she needed to support herself. She needed to support her family, and she wants her kids to kind of understand just how hard she works and why she works so hard. And she does work really fucking hard. Vicki Gunvalson, like, her life calling is not to be a reality star. She accidentally ended up as a reality star. Her life calling has been to sell insurance. And she's able to run this insurance agency out of her house. She has employees, which we'll get to in a second. And we meet her daughter, who if you're on the internet, if you're on Twitter, you will immediately recognize as Little Miss, oh my God, I thought this was a classy party, or
Oh my God. I thought this was a classy party.
her daughter Brianna. And Brianna is 18. She's getting ready to go to her senior prom before she finishes high school. And Vicki's asking her all these questions. She's asking her, like, oh, where are you going after the prom? Oh, who's all going to be there? All these different questions. She's telling her, no alcohol, no sex. And Brianna's like, oh, okay, like, relax.
What color tux did he get?
White.
You went with white? I wish you would have gone with the black.
No,
Why
white's
didn't you
funny.
go with-
White's funny.
What color shoes did he get?
White.
Oh, Brian's gonna look like a popsicle.
Oh my God.
That's so funny.
Oh, it's so funny.
No, I don't like that. I think we need to switch it to black. So are you sure you're curling this right?
Yeah.
Vicki is somebody who longs for control. Again, for reference, I've made it to season 7 of this show. So I know Vicki is a controversial character for a number of different reasons. Most of her controversial actions I have not reached yet. So please just bear that in mind. I like her. I'm kind of a Vicki defender. And Vicki basically expresses that, like, she's kind of feeling emotional because this is her last event as a mom, to go to her last, like, prom. You could argue either which way about whether that's, like, living too vicariously through your kids. I don't think so. I mean, I think that's, like, kind of a normal thing to feel some type of attachment to, because, like, parents do like these types of things. It's part of growing up, part of raising your kids. So in addition to Brianna, Vicki also has a son named Michael, who's a year older, who's in universities at his first year of college. Sorry, they're American. I'm not. He's away at his first year of college. And it was actually Vicki's son, Michael, who had written in and responded to the advertisement about wanting people from Coto de Casa for this documentary style show, because he thought that him and his friends would be a really good fit. And he basically was like, well, you know, I'm away at college, but I'll be home between semesters training to work for my helicopter mom and her insurance agency. And they read that and they were like, helicopter mom with a job? Because not many women in the area were working. So they kind of immediately wanted to talk to somebody because that was a little bit of an anomaly. And Scott Dunlop was immediately taken by her. Immediately was like, this woman is magnetic. Like, we need her on TV. And she didn't really get it. She was like, why would I want to be on TV? I'm not that pretty. I don't know anything about television. Why would I want to be on TV? And they had to basically convince her to be on this show. And apparently filming with her was kind of hard because she just wanted to fucking sell insurance. Like, she didn't really care to be on the show. She was just like, I mean, if you want me to do it, I'll do it. But, like, Mom, I'm here to sell my insurance. I'm here to sell healthcare packages. Oh, I just realized the timing of that. We do have one more woman who we have to meet, but we will get to her. Don't worry. I have not forgotten. The show is not forgotten. But we do go back to Jeana and her kids, and she talks a bit more about, like, sports in the family. And she says, she's like, you know, we always kind of wanted one boy, one girl. It was always the boy was going to play baseball. And she makes another comment about the genetics.
After we had Shane and we had Cara, we had our boy and a girl, and we're like, oh, look at that genetics. How can you resist? Let's just try for one more boy.
So she says, she's like, it was always planned that the boys were going to play baseball like their dad, like their grandfather. But Cara, her daughter, didn't pick volleyball up fast enough. So she's like, I want her to, you know, become a doctor or a lawyer or something, which I do feel like there's something kind of, like, gendered about that, of like, oh, we want the boys to play baseball, but you need to go be a doctor. Like, okay. But she does say, she's like, And this is a sentiment we see not just expressed in this season of this franchise, but something that's kind of expressed like throughout the course of the entire dynasty of Real Housewives, is like mother daughter, like the mom not wanting the daughter to go through what she went through. And Jeana talks about, she's like, I don't want Cara to even think about getting married until she's like 30. I don't want her to do what I did and get married super young, which is understandable, but mama, a doctor or a lawyer? When I say that there is a long answer to what I love about Real Housewives, I could do an entire video on that. But it's funny because I'd always thought, me as a sociology student, sociology graduate, thank you, I'd always thought I was reading too much into the show when I was really interested in like the themes of like class, like social class, economic class, race, sexuality, gender, like motherhood, female friendship, the relationships between even these women and their mothers. Like all that stuff was so fascinating to me. And like, again, what I love about Real Housewives, the long answer, I could go on. But reading Not All Diamonds and Rosé, that was something that was always kind of like on the table about the show. That was always something that was very openly discussed among early viewers and among production, was this kind of anthropological, sociological element of the show, which was very, very, very vindicating and affirming for me. Literally like a when your wife thinks she's the fucking coach moment. Like, yeah, come on. So while Jeana is watching Cara play volleyball, we see Matt, her husband, watching Shane play baseball. And Jeana says that if Shane makes the major leagues, that he'll be the third generation to do so. So his father played, and his grandfather, so his father's father, obviously played. And that's a pretty big deal because I think they'd be the second family ever to have that as an accomplishment. So obviously there's a lot of pressure on Shane, and obviously it is a big part of their family and their life and all of that, which is, again, a lot of pressure. And Matt makes a comment about, he says, as fast as you go up in sports, you can go down. And they have a little like stat on the screen that says in 1978 he was voted MLB All-Star, and 1979 losing pitcher 14 games straight. They do talk about, apparently, like they had bought another house so that Shane could play on a team at a different school because the team at the school he was on was not very good, so they weren't satisfied. Anyways, then we have Kimberly, and she's taking her daughter Bianca to go get her makeup done for the middle school dance. And she talks about how she's like living in Baltimore and raising her daughter in Baltimore, like it was very easy to limit her exposure to certain parts of life that Kimberly didn't necessarily want her to be exposed to. And she kind of elaborates on that a little bit, where she says, like, in Keough, it's very common for girls to get breast implants as a graduation gift in high school, which there's a lot to unpack there. But she says, and she even tells the makeup artist, she's like, it's a middle school dance, don't make her look 25, like make her look like she's a fucking middle schooler. And she says, she's like, if Bianca wants to get breast implants when she's 40 years old, having a midlife crisis like I did, that's her prerogative, but I don't want her even thinking about that. I want her to live enough of her life without worrying about that, which is actually really nice. Like, Kimberly does seem like a really good mom. Like, she wants her daughter to have a pretty normal life given where they live, and that seems to be a priority for her, which is really nice because, as we've seen with other kids, they're very spoiled. So, but we see Bianca and her friends getting ready for the dance, and she makes a comment about, she's like, a lot of the other girls, she's like, my dress was about $200, but a lot of the other girls, their dresses were more expensive. So like,
oh, that's really pretty. Let me see it.
I think my dress cost about $200, and I think other people spend a little bit more.
Obviously, even at that age, like, money and that kind of thing is something that's like being talked about, which might be what Kimberly meant when she said it's kind of hard to keep your kid kind of sheltered from certain aspects of life here in Keough.
They're going from looking like they're maybe 11, 12 to 25.
There's one girl here who literally, hair and dress is giving Elsa, like Elsa from Frozen, like, let it go, Elsa. And then in that, we transition into Brianna's pre-prom party where everybody's, dressed all fancy, kind of the same thing.
She tries to live through me, like the whole experience of the time of my life right now. She like wants to be like in everything with me. Oh, that's enough.
Vicki kind of is giving Regina George's mom, like, just the blonde hair and all of this. And like, I understand Vicki to an extent. especially because she is like pretty young. Everybody looks like a vision of 2000s fashion, 2000s realness. Oh me, oh my. Oh me, oh my. And Vicki says in Keough, nothing is little, everything is grand. So I got this big white stretch limo. Everybody's all glitzed and glams for the gods. So we're back with Joe and Slade, and Slade says, you know, I love spending time with my boys. It's the best time of my day with his kids. And while he's spending time with his kids, Joe and her friends are getting ready to go out, and Joe's friends are like, yay, I'm so glad you finally decided to come out with us. Like, finally, we haven't seen you in forever.
I just wish she wanted to spend more time with us together as a family.
I love Slade, but the more time that I spend with my friends, the more I start to realize how much I miss them.
I'm not gonna lie, this is probably gonna be the plot characters, whatever you want to call it, that I'm going to discuss the most, because this is like very riveting and sad, and it just pisses me the fuck off. And I know people ran that like she should have been at the club meme into the ground, but I've never seen a more clear example of she should have been at the club. She should be at the club.
I would love to see Joe step up and become that housewife that I've kind of dreamed of.
I'm no relationship guru by any means, but this 36-year-old man wants this 24-year-old that he's not even married to step up and take care of the kids and be this housewife that I've always dreamed of. No, we saw like 8 more episodes of this. Right here, you were starting to see why Slade Smiley is literally public enemy #1 in Garbage Candy Land. Because are you fucking serious? And Joe is saying Slade wants me to be at home more, and like I am at home, but like when I want to go out with my friends, I want to go out, which is understandable because it's like she's at home all day, and if her friends have jobs like she wants to have, this is the only time she can see them. Like and it's funny because her little tagline is, he's kind of keeping me, which like that's exactly what he's doing. It's this kind of kept woman thing, and they do say that, like, talk about it in the books I've read, was where they talk about like it was such an interesting perspective on this lifestyle, because I feel like a lot of people really do glorify this kind of like trophy wife, you know, marry a rich man, I never have to work again. They kind of glorify that. This just puts such an interesting perspective on it, that it's like, yeah, if that's your choice, but it's not really her choice. She wants to work. She wants to go out. She wants to spend time with her friends. She wants to have a job. She wants to have a life. But Slade is like, I want you to be that perfect housewife I've always dreamed of. Like, that you've always dreamed of. Like, he very much sees her as like a add-on to his life. Like, he's allowed to have this I don't want to get into a whole lecture. He's allowed to have this full and complete life, have a job, have kids, former marriages, all this stuff. But her entire existence has to revolve around him. What? Because he pays the bills? You're out of your fucking mind. I'm sorry. Like, control it.
I love you. I miss you. I know it's really late and it's like 2 a.m, but I love you. Oh, it's 3 a.m? Oops.
Here's the thing. Without giving away too much of how this is going to go, because trust me, we will be getting more than into it. We will be getting inside of it and wearing it like a fucking suit. But a lot of their conflict does stem from the fact that like she's immature and they have different priorities in life, and it's like, yeah, buddy, she's 24 years old and you're 36. Like, we're back at Vicki's home insurance agency, home office, whatever you call it. And her daughter's coming in. She's talking about, you know, they're planning for graduation. And she's talking about how they've invited Brianna's biological father, who she says she doesn't really have that much of a relationship with. And that Vicki is kind of both mom and dad to her because of just how much of a role she's taken on. And again, she doesn't have that much of a relationship with her dad. And while we're in Vicki's home office, we are introduced to the final piece of the puzzle, Lauri wearing. I don't really know how to say her last name. I don't think they ever really say it. Lauri. We're introduced to Lauri. And Lauri is one of Vicki's employees.
Are the police involved?
And I just have to say, Lauri is gorge. Lauri is gorge Tina. Like, So Vicki basically kind of took a chance on Lauri because Lauri is in the same position that Vicki was in. She's a single mom and she's newly divorced and is screwed out of any money. She didn't get any financial settlement. She's low on cash and she needed work, and she needed work now. And she's had to move into a townhouse outside of Keough. So she brings kind of a fresh, interesting perspective because she had that life that we're being introduced to on the show, but she lost it. So it's funny because Andy Cohen, being a longtime soap opera fan, really was taken by Lauri, like really wanted her on the show because she kind of reminded him of something out of like The Young and the Restless, just with like the fact that she's so beautiful and her story and all of that stuff. And it is interesting because there was a little bit of kind of like, not pushback, but they were kind of debating having her on the show just because like she's single and she doesn't live in Keough. Like the whole point of the show is to show these married women in Keough and their families. So they kind of were really initially pushing back, but then they kind of liked this angle of like, you know, this girl from like the wrong side of the tracks type thing, or at least that's what they say in the book. But it is kind of interesting, as somebody again who has watched a lot of Housewives, like I feel like, I don't want to say trope because like these are real women and their real lives, but this kind of trope archetype of like a woman who is, relatively speaking, compared to the rest of them, a little bit more like down on her luck, not rolling in cash, at least not anymore, usually divorced and or single, and like they do kind of become staples on the show. It is kind of a staple archetype. Like we see it multiple times again, whether it's intentional or not, with like Lauri, Brandi Glanville, Monica Garcia, Bethany Frankel, like this kind of, not necessarily an outcast, but somebody who is not living this glamorized lifestyle the same way the other women are and are usually single, which I just think rounds things out and does bring in a really interesting perspective.
I really miss my old house a lot. I miss this place. I miss this whole community. This is the house that I lived in behind the gates with my former husband and children. And as you can see, it's a big, beautiful home, great community. What I miss most about being behind the gates is the safety factor. I knew my neighbors and I just felt safe.
And she says that before she ended up filing for divorce, she sat down with her kids and they had a meeting, and she said like, this is going to be tough, but we're going to get through it. And she says that after the divorce, that her son Joshua, her teenage son, was the one who was kind of hit the hardest and took it really hard, and the divorce had a really bad impact on him, which is really unfortunate. They moved into this itty-bitty townhouse, and thankfully her eldest daughter Ashley is living in LA on her own, so it's just Lauri and then her two youngest, Sophia and Joshua. And she says like, even though, you know, the townhouse is cramped and we're kind of on top of each other and it's just such a big adjustment from what we were used to, it is tough, but she looks at it like an achievement. Like she looks at it like, I was able to afford this on my own and I was able to do this and be able to support myself, which is really nice and I think is a really good way to look at it. Next we see Joe and Slade, and every time I say Slade, I'm literally in my head I'm saying it with the amount of disdain as Robin on Teen Titans says Slade, because that is how I feel. He is literally the supervillain of this fucking show to me. We see Joe and Slade have this sit down on a patio, and he basically is telling her, you know, I love that you're able to go with your friends, and I know you love to spend time with your friends, but it makes me really uncomfortable that, you know, you and your friends are basically out there hunting for boys while I'm at home with the kids. But he says, I don't mean to keep drawing. I know that sort of the blended family dynamic can always be very complex. There's definitely more layers, and there's more to being a parent than being somebody's biological parent. Absolutely understand that. However, the way he talks about the kids, he talks about them as if they're their kids, the two of them, Joe and Slade's kids, which they are not.
We're not married yet, and I'm still trying to play my age. Well, I'm just saying.
We're not officially married yet, so sometimes I still want to be young and 24 and out partying.
When you had made a commitment that you were going to try and be home more often.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, considering every day of my life you leave me to go work and supposedly conduct business meetings when I know very well that you're hanging out with the escrow girls and the processor girls and they are so hitting on you.
And the thing is, right then and there, he says he's like, well, maybe this isn't the best relationship, which is frustrating because he's the one who's so refusing to compromise. And he says, he's like, you know, you've got a pretty good deal going on. Like, got all this shit paid for. She drives an expensive car. She lives in a 500 square foot, 5,000 square foot house. You know, she's got a good deal and I'm a catch. And he also has actually psycho eyes, like actually psycho. And it's like, oh, well, maybe this isn't the best relationship for you. And it's like, you're already not agreeing on such basic core principles and you're at such different phases of your life. I just don't understand it.
Okay, we need to end this conversation.
Okay, fine. Can we also get menus, please?
Thanks.
So back at the Keough household, it is draft day. It's the first day of the drafts. Apparently it's a 3-day process and they're basically going to find out if Shane made the draft or not. And Cara says, she's like, I don't want to be anywhere near this room because this is deciding the rest of his life basically, and if this doesn't go well, I don't want to be around. Which, yeah, fair. Jeana says that Shane, school's not really a priority for him, and so he is not really in a good position for the draft, and after the first day his name is not seen. Day 1 of drafts, it's not going well. It's not looking good for Shane Keough, especially considering the lineage. Like, there's just a lot riding on it. Jeana says that Shane had no plans of going to college because he just thought he was going to get drafted right out of high school and was going to play, but things aren't going so well because he didn't get enough playing time because his grades weren't good. So he's not quite fucked, but it's not looking promising. Let's just say that.
Maybe 6 or 7 Eastern time. See, it's out in New York.
Interesting. First day of drafts over, we haven't heard anything about Shane. Oh well.
Knowing the lineage and the gene pool I've been in, if I didn't make it, it would just be like, well, that was a waste of 18 years of playing baseball.
So back at Lauri's house, she gets a call from Ashley, who's her daughter, who's living in LA. And Ashley says she's going to come visit and she wants to talk. And Lauri doesn't really know exactly what that means. And Ashley shows up with a rolling suitcase and a dog that's kind of housebroken. So, and Lauri's kind of like, how's LA? And Ashley's like, not feeling her. Ashley's decided that she's done living in LA. She's done having a job. She's going to come back and live with her mom. And her mom is like, I don't think so. The whole interaction is kind of awkward because Ashley thinks Lauri's going to be really excited to have her back. Because she's like, what kind of mom wouldn't be excited to have her daughter back coming home? And Lauri's like, things are tight enough already. I don't need a third body walking in the door with a fucking dog, mind you. And Lauri basically tells Ashley, like, well, if you're going to live here, you're going to need a job. Like, those car payments aren't going to pay themselves, and I'm certainly not paying them. So I'm going to talk to Vicki. I see if I can get you a job selling insurance with us. And she's like, ew, that sounds so not fun. She's like, well, it's not really about fun. It's about the paycheck. Like, hello?
I think the only advantage that I honestly see is that I have a built-in babysitter.
My mom thinks I'm going to be a live-in babysitter for her every second when she needs it. I don't think so. It's not happening. I don't know. I don't want to have a job.
You know what? I don't want to have a job either.
So then Lauri goes for drinks with her friend Lorelai, and she kind of tells her, she's like, I don't know what the fuck I'm going to do now. I was not expecting this to be dropped in my lap. This just kind of sucks. What the hell am I going to do? And then Lauri and her friend Lorelai go clubbing. And I'm not even joking when I say that the club that they're at, this experience they're having, this would fix me. This would literally heal me. Being at this club with them would genuinely heal me. Any issues I'm having, poof, gone. So back in Kodo, at the Keough household, we see Shane's graduation party.
Today is my graduation day, and I'm not going. I don't see the point of standing in a room and getting handed a fake piece of paper that's supposed to be your diploma. I don't know. I'm not really a school person.
Which is him watching TV with no shirt on and hanging out in the pool. Jeana's not even going to be there because she said she has some fundraising thing that was already on the books that couldn't be moved. So it's a non-event, if you will, in the Keough household, which is like to each their own, but that's kind of sad to me. I don't know. Like, that is kind of a big day. So while Shane Keough is having his solo graduation party for one, in the pool at his house. Vicki down the road is having Brianna's graduation party, and she's flown in her ex-husband, Brianna's biological father, Michael Sr., and her son, Michael, who we're meeting for the first time. The reason that she's on the show, thank you. Michael met Vicki because they worked at the grocery store together back in Chicago, and he never wanted to beg. He was the, what the hell is the word for it? Grocery bagger. The guy who bagged the fucking groceries, okay? And Vicki was a cashier, and he never wanted to bag for her because she was so fast. She's the fastest cashier, like that fucking meme. He speaks of her fondly, but she says that he was kind of a ball and chain for her. They just were a total mismatch. They got married really young. Brianna says she's like, he doesn't really fit in here. Like, he's just different. And like, Vicki always had big aspirations, and she loved beautiful things. So her living out here does kind of make sense. And we do meet Michael Jr., Vicki's son, for the first time. And he's obviously a lot more laid back than Vicki, a lot more like his biological father.
I can totally identify with my dad. My mom was always on his case, but that was 10 years ago, and now she's on my case.
You'll have to figure it out, Mike. After college, you're cut.
So when do you start work, Mike? Next year?
This summer, I'd really rather just, lounge around, have a good time with my friends, go to the beach.
Come on, you came out here from school. You gotta get a job now. Groundwork, bottom level.
Not for me.
Vicki's obviously freaking out about being an empty nester because she's gonna miss her kids and all this. And Brianna's like, I'm excited to go, but also I know my mom is freaking out about being an empty nester, so it is kind of sad. But Vicki assures herself Brianna's not going to be that far, so she can still go up and have dinner with her whenever she wants. And knowing Vicki, she absolutely will.
You can have all the money in the world, you can have the image that you're happy, but if you don't have the friends in the community and people to enjoy your life of luxury with, it gets kind of lonely.
This is actually the first interaction that we see between the women on the show, thank God, is Kimberly is hanging out with her friends, and she's like, when we lived in Baltimore, we went out once a month at most, and here it's minimum once a week, sometimes 3 times a week. So clearly this is a very social community, and these bonds are important, which does kind of make me feel for Jo. But she comes over and she's like, hey, I know this is kind of a weird question, but like, do you ladies live in Keough?
I really haven't had the opportunity to meet a lot of the women in Keough quite yet. Hi. Hi. This is gonna sound like a really random, awkward, weird question, but do y'all ladies live in Keough?
We do. Yeah. A woman approached us and asked if we lived in Keough.
I don't know any of the wives there at all. Go check it out.
Sit down, are you by yourself? She was new to Keough and she wanted to meet other women. So we asked her to join us.
And she's like talking about her life and saying like, yeah, we're engaged. She just shows off her engagement ring. It's a canary diamond. And all the ladies are fucking gagged. They're gagging for this ring. And she's like, I didn't really know what a canary diamond was when we got engaged. Like, apparently it's really rare. Apparently it's really expensive. And she says that Slade actually proposed to her on New Year's Eve, which is like, here's the attention you ordered. Like, I don't know. Again, I'm no relationship guru. I'm not going to knock anybody else's life, but New Year's proposal? Are you crazy? And Jo's basically sitting there like, we needed this. I needed this. I needed to get out of the house. And she explains, I was working in the mortgage industry. That's how I met Slade. And then now I'm not working. Yada, yada, yada. And this woman at the table, she goes, is that what you wanted or is that what he wanted? Gag. And then Jo goes, you know what? That's actually a really good question. But she says, she's like, at first it felt mutual, but now as I've been home for like a year, it's kind of feeling more and more like it was his decision. And they basically all kind of express when she says, she's like, yeah, like I kind of just sit in the house all day. They're like, I would go crazy. I would lose my mind being in the house all day. Like, how do you do it? And she asked him, she's like, do you work? And Kimberly's like, I never had to answer to anybody else financially because I had a job, and then when I had kids, it kind of made sense for me to stay home. So I can't imagine being in the situation that you're in. Like, I would go out of my fucking mind. And Jo says, she's like, yeah, I had my own goals and all this, but now I'm just sort of at home cleaning and fluffing pillows all day. Like, it's not very fulfilling. Which, like, my thing, he says he wants her to be at home cleaning the house all day. I'm like, how dirty can the house be that she has to spend the entire day every single day cleaning the house? That's what I don't get. But anyways, Kimberly says, she's like, yeah, like I was kind of going crazy at first. It is a huge adjustment going from having a job to being at the house all day, that I kind of started to find, okay, how can I fill my time? Like, let me go mountain biking. Let me do this. Let me go to Pilates. She says, she's like, let me get on some sexy lingerie and come up with a little dance for my husband. And Jo's like, wait, I like that last one.
It's tough because I've been retired for 13 years. Nobody asks me what I used to do. You're at a cocktail party, it like goes dead on somebody's face and they walk away when you're in your late 20s and you're not working.
And that's the problem that we're having, is the fact that I did have big goals, I have big dreams, and all of a sudden I meet this man, he gives me this life, and now I'm at home cleaning up the house and fluffing pillows during the day because I don't do anything else.
Anyways, back at the Keough household, Shane has been drafted. Yay! He was the 36th round, which seems like it's like, yay, he got drafted, but like we could have done better than 36 rounds. And Jeana says, she's like, you know, because his grades weren't good, he didn't get a lot of playing time, like I mentioned. So instead of being drafted in the top 5 rounds, which he realistically should have been, he was drafted at the 36th round. So they're happy that he got drafted, but a little bit disappointed because the results are like pretty mid. But yay. And Shane again is breathing through his fucking mouth. So per Kimberly's advice, we see Jo at home. She's again talking about how bored she is. There's kind of not really much to do. We see her again looking bored as shit. But as per Kimberly's advice, she pours herself a big gaboon of wine and gets to putting on some outfits and doing a little dance for Slade. And she puts on a pink feather boa and kind of gives him a lap dance. And then they start kissing, and then he takes her top off. It's just like, okay, work. Like, what a way to close the episode. So that was the first episode, which kind of just serves to introduce these women and their families and their lives and that kind of thing. And I'm excited to see the rest of the episodes because I like them more than I like this episode. Yeah. That's that on that. I hope you enjoyed this video. I didn't film a proper outro for this because initially my plan was to have all of season 1 be one long mega video, but I thought that was kind of a big undertaking for my first video, so I decided to make this its own standalone video. If you liked it, please leave a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you for the rest of season 1. Bye bye.